So thanks. So you guys can hear me. First, it's a pleasure to talk to you in this setting. One word about who I am. I'm a professor at Humboldt University, and I have a group of people at the Robert Koch Institute, and my background is modeling infectious diseases. And it's been the curse of this pandemic that in Germany, people have been identifying me and my group with modeling activities that were taking place at the Robert Koch Institute, but which we were actually doing a number of other things at the Robert Koch Institute, which I want to present some here that are more concerned about assessing the situation and using digital tools to do that. And I think this is very important for getting a better picture of what's going on a much faster scale. One of the challenges in the past has been that during the pandemic, especially during the first year, there was always discussions about, what is the incidence, what are the numbers, etc. What kind of numbers should we feed into the models, etc. And time is very crucial. One of the elements of the no COVID strategy was acting fast and quickly and not postpone reactions to the current situations by unnecessary time lag. So one of the things that I also think could be embedded in the World Health Network is citizen science. And we started a project right at the beginning of the pandemic that was called the Data Donation Project in Germany. And in my view, this helped us to some extent to understand what's going on in the pandemic. So I'm going to go through this a little bit and introduce to you this project and explain to you how it helped and how I think this should be rolled out on an international scale outside of the companies that do that anyway. I'll come to that in a second, and outside of governments. So the data donation project is the basic idea was that people donated data that was collected by wearable devices like smartwatches and fitness tracking devices, physiological data like daily heart rate and activity and sleep, because based on an idea published a while back, you can read off whether a person has a fever symptom from this data with a fairly high reliability because of changes of heart rate with respect to a person's baseline. And so we launched this, and it was a citizen science project. So voluntarily, people donated this data every day, all of those people that had a smartwatch. And we had quite from the beginning about 500,000 donors in Germany, given that data security and data security awareness in the population is very, very sensitive. That's a very high number. And so of these people, we were able to detect deviations like you see here in the heart rate, a raised heart rate, and a drop in activity, and identified this with fever symptoms. And you cannot do this on an individual basis with high reliability, but on a population basis, deviations from the baseline mean something is going on. And in fact, like since a while back, this is now part of the nowcasting system that we use, that is a sort of short-term prediction that is updated every day and is quite reliable. But I want to kind of explain why this is more important, not only for why the range of application is much wider than just doing nowcast in this kind of situation. One of the things that we recently found is shown here in this slide, and it's quite worrisome because the people that wear these devices are usually quite healthy and younger. But we see you see this on the top right. That's the red curve is the deviation, the daily heart rate of a person that got infected where the black line is, or that got positively tested where the black line is. And you can see quite long-term deviations from the baseline, which is the blue line that lasts, between 40 and 120 days. The same is true for sleep and activity. So even among this group of people that are quite healthy, there are long-term effects over like 3 months and more. to these physiological time series. So that's quite worrisome, and it's a question that addresses long COVID, and we just wanted to supply some evidence because that discussion is just quite annoying how it's going on. But there are a number of things that are not in the data donation, but I think they should be in there, and I think they could be if this is rolled out in a different way. One of the things that we also analyzed is, and that's part of the thing that is not in the donation project, but it's part of the mobility, it's part of the contact monitoring. I'm going to show you a trace of measurements of about 1 million people, of which we have the GPS location as a function of time, and their contacts. And you can see as a function of time that relates to some of the things that Marco said. I think that even before government measures are taken, people react to the pandemic, and quite quickly. That you can see that in the first wave during the first lockdown. If you look at the upper trace, I apologize for the German labeling because it was made for a German audience. Right before the first lockdown, people reduced contacts already massively, and then it went up and down. And you can see that now in the winter, if you focus between July, the summer, and October, it increased again. It didn't become normal again, but there is an increase. And you can see these gray lines. Those are like weekend activities. And what's particularly worrisome is the variation of contacts. You see this on the bottom line. This means that people meet now more variably. So they, every now and then they meet 1 or 2 people a day, but then they go on the weekend to meet lots and lots of people, which is puts a lot of force of infection on this entire event. But we don't have this kind of information about contacts, and it could be part of a worldwide data donation project that is managed in a distributed and non-centralized way in order to understand this. Because at the end of the day, we don't understand this thing because we don't understand contact networks. And another element of data, we collected this on the mobility project. I'm just going to show you a picture of how mobility was affected during the pandemic with respect to normal mobility. This is a picture of Germany. The mobility network on the left is the usual network, and on the right, it's during lockdown. And so these effects are massive, and they need to be quantified, and they, of course, need to be incorporated in quantitative models of disease dynamics. But it's more important to look at this data in order to understand how the community, how the population responds to either policies or the pandemic itself. And it's quite intriguing how this works. So it's not only policies people react to, but it's actually the neighborhood information in the social network and news. And so one of the things that this is why I think this is the World Health Network is the right audience for this, is because the issue with this sort of all of these projects and data donation in general is that people don't trust Google, Facebook, etc., and these companies for good reasons. And these companies collect this data. So if you're a government, you may collect this data, and at the Robert Koch Institute, we are a government agency, and we collect this data, but people don't trust the government either, also for good reasons. So my dream about this, maybe it could be realized in the next pandemic, that we have something like the World Health Network, something decentralized, something that is neither government nor a big profit-oriented companies that can build something like this, where people are willing to do this, because the data is so valuable, so massively valuable to understand the situation, that it's really worthwhile doing it. And on that note, I'm going to end this presentation that I was going to show last night, but it didn't happen. So thanks so much.